I'm Leslea Wahl. Welcome back to Faith Through Fiction. This month we will be discussing the struggle of doing God's will. Now, doing God's will may not seem much of a teen struggle, especially for Christians, but when we recognize that doing God's will may mean not doing what we want to do, it can be difficult to digest. Add that to the fact that many of our peers often live only to please themselves, sometimes encouraging us to do the same, and the struggle becomes more difficult. So what does doing God's will actually mean? Simply put, it means coming to know, love, and serve the Lord so well that when we recognize what it is that God wants from each of us. Of course, discerning God's will for us isn't easy. It's not as if God whispers his desires to us, giving us a play-by-play on how he wants us to fulfill them. Now that would be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? No, he wants us to learn his will by building a relationship with him. And we do this through prayer and living his word. And with more and more people turning away from God, it's become so much more important than ever to focus our lives on doing his will. This month's featured author will take us further into the complex subjects of doing God's will. So let me pass you on to fellow Catholic teen books author T.M. Gaouette so you can find out who our featured author is.
Thank you, Leslea. Hey guys. Okay, so for this month, we're blessed to have Marie C. Keiser, who will be going into a deeper discussion on the theme of doing God's will. Now, Marie C. Keiser is our newest member at Catholic Teen Books. She's a Catholic wife, mother, and former teacher who writes books about characters who struggle with their faith. She's also the author of the science fiction novel Heaven's Hunter, and she contributed to the most recent Catholic Teen Books anthology for Lent, Ashes, Visible and Invisible, with her story, Take Up Your Cross. So Marie will be presenting Heaven's Hunter, and she'll also explain how doing God's will plays a major role in her story and in the lives, our lives in general. Here's Marie.
In the great play, A Man for All Seasons, St. Thomas More says, God made the angels to show him splendor, as he made the animals for innocence and plants for their simplicity. But man he made to serve him wittily in the tangle of his mind. We humans find God's will really hard. Like Leslea just said, we want God to give us a play-by-play of everything he wants us to do. We think that if he just told us exactly what he wanted and exactly why, then we wouldn't have any problem doing God's will. The thing is, though, that isn't really doing God's will. Because what he actually wants from us is that struggle. We're supposed to take what information we have and make the best decisions we can. And sometimes we're going to be wrong. And that's okay. St. Joseph, even he made mistakes. When he found out Our Lady was going to have a baby, he was really confused, and he thought about it, and he prayed about it, and then he made a decision, which was he was going to privately divorce her. Now, that wasn't the right decision, and God actually sent an angel to tell him that he should take care of her and take care of the baby, and that he'd been chosen by God for that mission. But the thing is, he had to figure it out for himself first. So if we follow St. Joseph's example and try to do God's will, we're going to make mistakes too. But that's part of God's plan. He makes that part of his plan. And he probably won't have to send an angel to tell us what we're supposed to do. He's probably going to let circumstances take care of that. The people around us, the things that happen, the results of our decisions. He always comes up with a new plan that takes it all into consideration. So instead of agonizing about every single decision we make and wishing God would just tell us what to do, we should try to be a little more peaceful. Don't stress so much about every decision and try to make every decision absolutely perfect. We can't always do the most perfect thing every single time. We'll go insane trying. So all we have to do is just do something we know is good and ask God to keep showing us His will. Even our mistakes and our detours and our side trips, all of that's going to get worked into God's amazing plan for our lives. In my book, Heaven's Hunter, I sort of pull into this theme. Randall doesn't know God. He's just trying to do his job as a detective in the Galactic Fleet. But doing his job turns out to be exactly what brings him in contact with God. Each time he tries to do the right thing, whether it's hunting down a dangerous illegal organization, protecting innocent people, or just refusing to tell a lie, it takes him another step closer to the good things God has planned for him. Randall suffers for his choices, and we might do so as well. But he finds that the peace this path brings is worth it, and so will we. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. Catholic Teen Books features many stories with the theme of doing God's will, and we'd like to share a few more with you. My first suggestion is from Corinna Turner's I Am Margaret series. It's the novella Brothers. And in the dystopian world that Kyle lives in, pursuing a possible vocation means huge sacrifices, sometimes even deadly. I Am Margaret is such a great series for older teens. I really love that one. And my other choice is Susan Peake's novel, St. Magnus, The Last Viking. Growing up as a prince, Magnus thought his future entailed helping his father rule their land, but when banished and exiled by his cousin, Magnus comes to understand that God is calling him to restore his father's vanquished kingdom to its rightful hands. This is a really exciting real-life adventure that's really hard to put down. And my third choice is one of my own novels, Where You Lead. It's a contemporary story set amid the monuments and historic sites of Washington, D.C. Now, the main character, Eve, has an unusual experience that she believes is a call from God. Her determination to follow God's will leads her on the adventure of a lifetime as she searches for lost Confederate gold. And the book explores the idea of saying yes to God's call and His will, whether it be in extraordinary or even simple ways. So, TM, what suggestions do you have?
Thanks, Leslea. Great list. So here are some of my suggestions. The first book I've chosen is The Haunted Cathedral by Antony B. Kolenc. Now, this is the second in his Harwood Mystery series. And in this story, Zan struggles to follow God's will, to forgive one's enemies, especially because Zan is filled with anger against those who have seriously wronged him in the past. My next story is part of the West Brothers series by Theresa Linden. This story is Standing Strong. After his conversion over summer vacation, Jarrett returns to school, his old friends, and old temptations that have him floundering to remain faithful to God. Meanwhile, his brother Keith thinks God might be calling him to religious life, but he doesn't feel worthy because of past mistakes. It's not easy following God's will when the path is not clear and temptation is near. Finally, we have my novel, Guarding Aaron, which is the third book in the Faith and Kung Fu series. And in this story, we see Gabriel continuing to struggle with his desires. On one hand, he feels that a vocation as a priest is his destiny and yearns for that. But on the other, he has Tana Rose, who is this Hollywood starlet, and he has a growing love for her. So what he needs to discern is what God's will is for his life. Do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. That's Romans 12:2. The will of God is the only reason why we're here. It's a no-brainer, really, for Christians who understand that there is a purpose for us all. And so one of our goals is to know, love, and serve the Lord. And in doing so, we come to recognize our purpose. We must come to recognize the will of God in our lives. Now, that seems like an easy task, doesn't it? And it would be if everyone in the world focused on that goal. We would all understand each other's focus and support each other in it. And there would be no conflicts or distractions. But we live in a world, an imperfect world, where God is shunned, where personal ambition and pleasure-seeking overrides his will. But there is a way through the chaos. In order to stay focused on doing God's will, we must remain close to him, never allowing those in the world to get in the way of that relationship and distracting us from that goal. And that's it. Thanks for joining us for Faith Through Fiction. Until next time, check out more of our exciting, edifying titles on Catholic Teen Books. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and sign up for our monthly newsletter from me, TM Gaouette, and fellow Catholic Teen Books author Leslea Wahl. God bless.